Well, I never thought I'd find myself playing this type of game, let alone talking about it, publicly, on the internet, to a core viewer base who is probably more into slaughtering aliens than ensuring that their crops have enough water. But alas, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about what could be the most casual game I have ever played, Palia. So how did I, someone who generally dons the title of Guardian, Tenno, Helldiver, or Tarnished of No Renown, get to this point? In a single word, family. Me, my wife Mrs. Ironworker, and my daughter Agent Sparkles do very much enjoy gaming together, but what to play is often a point of contention. Finding something that suits everyone's taste is not an easy task. So sometimes I gotta make some concessions and keep an open mind about trying a game that's not exactly in my wheelhouse, since what we're playing matters far less to me than the fact that we're getting to play it together. So we kinda just collectively took a blind stab at Palia, which wasn't much of a monetary risk because it is a free download from the Epic Game Store and will be releasing on Steam towards the end of March. This title is also available on the Switch, but oddly, not for PlayStation or Xbox. I don't know why these consoles were excluded, but for the foreseeable future, Palia will be confined to the realms of PC and Nintendo. So what type of game is this? I don't really know, to be quite honest. The closest thing that I can equate it to from my past gaming experiences would be a crafting survival type game, but minus the survival part because there's never any risk of death or dropping your collected items. According to Agent Sparkles though, it feels like third-person Stardew Valley. And that's a game that I've never played, so that doesn't personally help me in terms of a frame of reference, but if you are someone who is familiar, maybe that can help you wrap your head around what to expect. But I feel like we're going through a lot of the same motions that I would in a typical survival game. Fishing, hunting, chopping trees, breaking rocks, tending and harvesting crops, upgrading and decorating your base, you get the point. All the basic elements of that type of game are in here. But removed are aspects like hunger, thirst, climate debuffs, stat point allocation, and the threat of enemies. As a matter of fact, there is no combat in this game at all. Your character doesn't even have an HP bar. I mean, you will have to plunk some woodland creatures with your bow and arrow, but that's about the extent of it. So it's just a collection and crafting simulator? No. I wouldn't say that it isn't that, but there's definitely more going on here. There is a main storyline with Palia, and I'm actually somewhat interested to see how things unfold. We're about 20 hours into the game right now, and I don't know exactly where that puts us, but it doesn't feel like we're closing in on the end of the narrative by any means. The general premise is, you, a human, have awakened in a land where humans had gone extinct a long time ago. With the help of the Majari, the elf-like people who now inhabit the world, you begin to unravel the mystery of why the humans had disappeared, and what ultimately spurred your character's reawakening. And I must say, I do always appreciate a little bit of intrigue to supplement the gameplay. Just having a couple questions floating around in the back of your mind can give the world at large a bit more character. Speaking of character, well, characters, poorly executed segue, my apologies. There are currently 25 unique NPCs that inhabit the world of Palia, who often can be found in or around the village of Kolyma, which does serve as the game's central hub. And all of them do have that very Disney-esque feel to them, with the typical stereotypes well represented. You have the jolly bumbling mayor, with his prudish wife, the goofy farmer, the wise sage, the reclusive hunter, the ex-monster-slaying blacksmith, the grizzled innkeeper, plus many more. They all collectively serve as the game's main quest givers, and you will be spending a lot of your time talking to and interacting with Palia's cast of characters to build up your relationship levels, which is not only an essential part for progressing each villager's individual story, but also in your own personal journey because some quest steps will be reliant on relationship tiers. The other key to unlocking progression within Palia is your skill level in each specific discipline. Be it hunting, fishing, foraging, cooking, you increase your level with these simply by performing tasks associated with that skill set. If you want to up your farming level, go till some dirt and plant some seeds. You want to get better at mining? Go break some rocks. And this feeds into that leapfrog resource gathering system that is present in many other games. Your basic axe can only cut down small trees. If you want to cut down bigger trees, up your level and unlock the standard axe. To cut down even bigger trees, you guessed it, level up some more to unlock the next tier of axe. But I must say, skill progression, much like everything else in this game, is kind of a slow burn. Everything in Palia takes time, and I'd venture to guess it's probably a bit more time than you'd initially expect. We'll take the smelter for example, a core component of nearly all crafting games. Once you've acquired the necessary ore, it takes 3 minutes to craft 1 copper bar. 6 minutes for an iron bar, and 3 hours for a single silver bar. Now, I do just have the basic smelter here, and cook times will be reduced once I get that thing upgraded. But early game, the time to craft these often essential items can serve as a hard progression roadblock. Now, I am slightly confused by this approach. I mean, I'm sure the intent here was to stifle progress a little bit so players can't just blitz through all the content in a couple of hours, but it does seem maybe just a little bit heavy-handed. But something that I would generally expect to see here, especially since we're talking about a free-to-play game, is that big insert coins here sign to start flashing, tempting players to spend real-world dollars to speed up progress. That's not the case though. Now, you can absolutely spend real money in Palia, but not on things that actually affect the gameplay. It all appears to be relegated strictly to cosmetics, which in a free-to-play game, I don't have any serious issue with. I do not like seeing cash shops tacked on to full-price games, but when the actual product is being given away for free, I mean, the developers gotta make some money back somehow. That being said though, there are 0 character customization items that are earnable in-game. You have the base options to choose from during your initial character creation, and without opening up your wallet, that's all you're gonna get. So if you do want a fancy new outfit, it's gonna cost you. This game does make use of a middleman currency by way of Palia coins, but it does feel like they are at least attempting to do right by the players here. A lot of these coin values on the bundles or individual items do align with the amount of coins that you're going to receive across the varying purchase tiers. This isn't applicable for every selection, but it does make it easier to put an actual dollar value on what it is you're purchasing. But some of them are quite pricey, like right here. You want these 3 outfits? That's a cool 50 bucks. In the end though, I have no personal desire to play dress up in this game, so I guess it really doesn't matter to me either way. Moving on to the multiplayer aspect. This game is marketed as an MMO, and I guess technically it is, but you don't actually need other players, save for a few specific instances. If you want to play this game solo, that's a perfectly fine option, and it really won't detract from your experience in any way. As a matter of fact, when me and the family play together, we generally just spend the bulk of our time kinda doing our own thing. Sometimes we'll bumble around as a pack if our quest steps happen to be in alignment, but it's never really necessary. Now you will see random players running around the map. I think as of right now, 25 people are allowed in one server at one time, but you don't have to interact with any of them if you don't want to. There are those couple of cases where it can be handy to have other people around though. You can help or receive help from other players through item requests. If you're a little short on a particular resource, you can see if someone on the server would be willing to pass a few your way. The other case, especially if you're just getting started, is harvesting some of the game's rare resources. Early game, when you're working with lower equipment levels, it is going to take multiple players hitting these at the same time to actually break them. Fortunately, most players will alert the entire server via text chat when discovering one of these resources, and wait for interested players to gather before harvesting. Onto the questing experience. What's that look like in Palia? I will say it's oftentimes a bit tedious. There's a lot of go make item and bring it back happening here. So not the most interesting thing in the world, but if you are vested in the game, you can lean on the fact that completing these mundane tasks will net some sort of forward progress. There are quest lines, generally the ones that revolve around the main narrative, that are a bit more meaty and interesting though. And one thing that really surprised me is that there are dungeon type activities in Palia. They're almost a little bit reminiscent of the Legend of Zelda series. Now, without a combat aspect, I didn't personally find them to be super engaging, but I'd say they were engaging enough for the most part. The dungeons that I've delved in so far have been a good blend of parkour and puzzle solving mechanics. And while I didn't find them to be at all oppressive, a casual player may not share the same outlook. For example, Mrs. Ironworker needed to purchase a paid carry to complete the Temple of the Gales. Thankfully, Agent Sparkles was willing to do it for the low price of one gas station slushie to be redeemed at a later date. Could Mrs. Ironworker have cleared the temple for herself if she really tried? Probably. But historically, parkour sections in video games have been a point of frustration for her. So I think for those people who come to Palia simply for the crafting and building aspects, they may share the same sentiment as my dear wife. In terms of the open world itself though, in my opinion, it is pretty well crafted. The overarching lands are split between 2 main areas, and it feels big enough without being too big. I mean, it's not one of those maps where you're going to have to spend a half hour of your life running from one side to the other, but the play space at large does by no means feel overly confined. The bold color palette and semi-cartoonish art style make it subjectively pleasing to the eye, and enjoyable to explore. but I think it kind of falls short in discoverability. Don't expect like a Skyrim type experience out of this. You're not gonna stumble into a cave and have the next 5 hours of your life consumed by a side quest that you weren't anticipating. But at the same time, I really don't think it's fair to expect that type of scope from this game. Those just weren't the bones that it was built from. A lot of care was put into making the lands visually appealing, while making the terrain itself interesting to traverse. And if that was indeed the main goal that the developers had in mind, I'd say mission accomplished. And while there probably are more points that I could highlight, I think I've said enough for you to get the gist of what Palia is all about. Is this a game that I would recommend though? To my YouTube channel's core viewer base, who I assume is more into blowing stuff up and shooting bad guys? No. This game's probably not gonna land. But if you don't mind games that fall on the casual side of the fence, if you're not turned off by the juvenile and lighthearted nature of the game, or if you prefer a slower paced gaming experience, I mean, sure, give it a shot. There is enough substance here to at least keep things interesting for a while. And if the game's not for you, finding that out's only going to cost you a little bit of your time. But yeah, that's Palia. Have a great day, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll catch you on the next one.